what a lovely surprise, because we've got Kuchava and little Not Ned who's around as well. He's being very shy at the moment. Unfortunately, he does not want to be seen too much, but she is calling him, so I'm hoping that at some point the little one will kind of come towards where we are. Interestingly enough, though, we were following tracks for Thandi for a long way, and she's come also into this area, and as we kind of got with her tracks into Chitwa, the guys said that they just had a brief view of her and they'd lost her in the bush, and then as they were trying to relocate, they came across Kuchava and the cub. So it seems as though Thandi's also around somewhere here. Kuchava looks pretty chilled at this stage. He doesn't look as though or she doesn't look as though she's too worried. And I mean, it's not like Thandi and her are fighting. There's no salivating that we're seeing. So I don't think they've kind of caught each other, but it's just they're very, very close to one another. The distance between the two sightings is probably about 200 meters, but yet they don't know of one another as far as we can see. You see him there? It's good to see him. It's been so long since I've seen him. In fact, the last time I saw this little cub, go to there we go, found him. The last time I saw him was, I think, in May, somewhere there. So it's been a long, long time. Now, unlike Thandi's little boy, who's started to relax really nicely, this cub, not so much. And that's simply due to the fact that he's getting so little exposure to vehicles these days. He's typically spending a lot of time hidden, and when he sees cars, he does what you're seeing now. And so it's important to sit with her, not chase him around, rather just sit with mom, and that desire to come towards his mother will eventually lead him to being a little bit more relaxed with the cars. But isn't that cool to see him? I know a lot of you have been wanting to see these two for a long time, so it'll be a welcome update to have them. And you can see how much he's grown since, well, particularly since the last time I saw him. He's double the size of what he was, maybe even more at this stage. Beautiful kind of looks about him, very similar to Thandi's cubs in many ways. Also quite a light colored leopard, which leads me to believe that potentially it could be Mulawati, that's the father of both this cub and Thandi's cub, but we'll have to see. Typical male leopard though, big ears, big paws, and big muzzle. It looks like they're kind of too big for their body, and they eventually grow into it, and they look a little bit more kind of in proportion once they reach sort of 2-3 years old. They typically, the ears don't look as crazy big. And it's a trait of this particular lineage. I mean, Thandi's boys, most of them have had big ears, and obviously in Kuchava's case, she's a direct descendant of Thandi, and so maybe that gene is being passed down to her little boy. But I think Thandi's here because Kuchava's body language has changed completely. She's up, she's growling, she's salivating, she's not a happy cat at all. There's the male cub, so is that the male cub? Or is that Thandi? Looks like Thandi. That's Thandi and Kuchava side by side. It's not the male cub. No wonder he ran. I was wondering what was going on. But there they go. They're fighting each other. I'm going to try and keep up with them. Oh no, guys. Not good. But luckily the cub is not here. He's run an opposite direction. Well, the fight continues. We've managed to find them again. So you've got Thandi on the left and Kuchava on the... Sorry, Kuchava's the one you're looking at now, and then Thandi's lying in the shade here. It seems like Kuchava's being the more aggressive of the two, and they're just lying apart from each other now, just growling and hissing and carrying on as leopards do. And this will be just a territorial dispute between mom and daughter. And so this is a perfect example. We talk about it regularly, that once they sever that bond as mother-daughter, it then becomes competition. You no longer are friendly anymore, and so they're chasing each other up and down, they're growling, they're salivating, and this is all a protection of their areas. And it's vitally important for both these females to do this because both of them have offspring. They're very similar ages. There's a little bit of a gap with Kuchava's being slightly older, but they need to protect their territories because a female like this can potentially be a threat to their offspring, and they are vying for competition with food, water, everything else. And so this is something that they need to sort out, and it's been a long time coming. I've been saying it for weeks now. that there is going to be a fight between these leopards because Sibui, Thandi and Kuchava are overlapping way too much on Chitwa at the moment, and at some point they were going to bump into each other. Luckily, the little cub got away and didn't get attacked by Thandi because she would have attacked him if she had found him on his own. And luckily, Kuchava spotted her before the cub spotted her, and she got up and kind of met Thandi head on. But it's been fascinating to see how she's kind of dominating Thandi a little bit. You would expect it to be the other way around with a bit of experience. But Kuchava being slightly bigger than what Thandi is, and bulkier, and she's being the far more aggressive of the two leopards. Now, I know it's not a great view of either of them, but you'll see what happens with this is that they lie like this, and they growl, and they hiss, and they go, and then all of a sudden it reaches a crescendo, and then they go at each other again. And then from there, it breaks apart, and then breaks apart together. It's a fascinating thing to watch. I've seen it a lot with males, particularly, but when the females do it, it's pretty interesting to see how they go about it. That's for sure. Here comes Kuchava. She's coming back around. She's just put herself in the shade. I think she was in the sun. Shame. It's very, very hot all of a sudden. The temperatures, I would reckon, are in the upper sort of 30s. If it wasn't for this little breeze, we'd be burning pretty badly out here at this stage. But you see how much salivation is happening there. You see that saliva dripping from the mouth. That's an indication, as soon as you see that in a leopard, that generally there's another leopard around, and that you need to be really, really kind of vigilant as to what's going on. Because so, Safari Detective, how old is too old for these kind of things? Never really too old. Leopards are always going to be in competition with one another, so you'll find them even when they're no longer breeding female, if they make it that long. They still do compete with one another, but the skirmishes get less and less the older they get. I normally find, though, that when they're not having cubs anymore, they tend to be a lot more kind of settled and not as aggressive about their territorial behavior. When there's cubs to protect, and as we know, both of these have pretty similar age cubs, there's a lot to lose, and so they're going to be aggressive at this age. Still, even though she's 14 years, she's going to be like that until such time as she doesn't really have cubs. Then she can be a lot more defensive and kind of move off and give way to these younger females. But for now, she needs to be brave and kind of hold her ground for the safety of her own cub. It's a crazy thing to think that this is just one big family that's feuding at the moment. And this is not going to be the only feud that Thandi's going to face, because Tlalamba pushing seriously hard as well. How this all played out is actually quite an interesting story. As we started out with Tlalamba's tracks, funny enough. And I'm going to show you a map while these guys are sleeping, to give you an idea of what actually happened this morning and how far this has all kind of brought us. But essentially, we started out, this is basically Buffelshoek, Djuma, Torchwood, and we started out here, all right, at Gallagher is kind of where our camp is, and the tracks as we got going for game drive this morning, I found her tracks, Tlalamba's tracks, going past our rooms and heading up. She eventually came out onto Gallagher shortcut. She went like this, up Hunters Road, up this way like this, and then she came all the way down to Dollarite, in here, down and across Pipe Road. So we were following up with her tracks here, and one of the guys was on this road, so I decided to go a little bit further south and picked up what was Thandi's tracks moving this way and then south, and then she came like this all the way down, and we came down, and eventually, can you hear the elephants? We ended up here on Chitwa, and we're basically on the main road at the moment, so the divide between the two is what's kind of taking place at this stage. But in fact, this is exactly where we are. Here's the new entrance over there. So we kind of in this area, but it just goes to show you how far Tlalamba is pushing at the moment. If you think she's covered this entire kind of area and she's pushing down into where Thandi is, and if you start looking at the sizes of territories, if you look where Thandi is now being pushed into, she's being pushed into just this little small thing over here with Tlalamba doing all of this in Sele up here, and if I just hold on, flip this over, this is kind of the Cheetah Plains, Chitwa, this is all Kuchava, kind of this area over here. So it's really kind of means that Thandi's being squished more and more and more into a smaller and smaller area. All right, so we're going to stay with them. We'll see what happens. Hopefully these two ladies will decide to do something at some point, now that there's some Ellies around. In the